The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory be to you.
Jesus instructed the 12 as follows. Do not be afraid, for everything that is now covered will be uncovered, and everything now hidden will be made clear. What I say to you in the dark, tell it in the daylight. What you hear in whispers, proclaim from the housetops. Do not be afraid of those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Fear him rather who can destroy both body and soul in hell. Can you not buy 2 sparrows for a penny? And yet not one falls to the ground without your Father knowing. Why, every hair on your head has been counted. So there is no need to be afraid. You are worth more than hundreds of sparrows. So if anyone declares himself for me in the presence of men, I will declare myself for him in the presence of my Father in heaven. But the one who disowns me in the presence of men, I will disown in the presence of my Father in heaven. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Tonight, I want us to reflect on the theme, don't give in to fear. I know fear is very natural. We are afraid of so many things. When the scriptures say, do not be afraid or be not afraid, as we read from Genesis to Revelation multiple times, we come across it, that doesn't mean you are not allowed to have a feeling of fear. As human, the feeling will be there sometimes, but what Jesus is saying is, even if you feel to be afraid, don't give in to fear. And this is because fear can paralyze us. Fear can cripple you. Fear can turn you into a different person for the rest of your life. Some people are so afraid of failure that they don't try many things because they don't want to fail. And others even fail before they tried. This is very common among students. Some students, when they are preparing for exams, they already failed the exam before it starts because of fear. We often are afraid of very little things, and sometimes we are afraid of great things, as tiny as virus, which we can't see with our eyes, except with the use of a powerful microscope. The whole world is under the threat of coronavirus. How big is that virus? I don't know. I've never seen a virus with my eyes. Why are we afraid of that? Because it creates death. It can threaten our existence, as tiny as it is. And oftentimes we could be afraid of big things like earthquakes, hurricanes, or typhoons. But our greatest fear as human is death. And that is one thing that Jesus came to conquer. He came to conquer our death. And then today he was addressing, in our gospel reading, today he was addressing the 12, not everyone. He was addressing them just before he sent them out to go and preach and proclaim the love of God to the entire nation and to make conversion of souls, to convert people. And then he said to them, as you go, do not be afraid. Because there's only one thing that is most important in your life, and that is the salvation of your soul. And there is only one person that is most important to you, that is God himself. Because only God has the power to destroy your body and your soul. Every other thing can only affect your body, but not your soul. But unfortunately, we live in a world that we are afraid of everything except what we should be afraid of. We live in a world where there is no fear of God at all. People have made themselves God. And so, Jesus instructing his disciple today is in line with what Jeremiah went through in our first reading. Jeremiah had people plotting evil against him. They set traps for him, and they said, we will see when he makes a mistake, and then we will catch him. And Jeremiah could no longer escape, so he cried to God, and God saved him. When God said, do not be afraid, God said that not because he's counting on our ability. He's not counting on your strength. He's counting on his own strength, because he's got your back. But we don't try God. We don't give him opportunity to even see how powerful he can be. We don't give him a chance because we are always afraid of everything. We are afraid of getting a bad name. We are afraid of losing our job. We are afraid of what our future will be like. We are afraid of failure. We are afraid of what people may think about us. And we are afraid of so many things to the point that we have ceased to be who we should be. Jesus gave 2 examples. He said, if God could count the number of hair on your head, which is needless, which means he cares even for what you don't need. And he gave another example. He said, look at the birds in the sky. As worthless as they are in our currency, because we can buy one of them with 2 pennies at that time, which is like 2 birds for $1, but not even one of those birds drop without God knowing. This is not important. By implication, he is saying God takes into account what as human we considered not to be important. And then he went further to say, are you not worth much more than those birds? Hundreds of them put together. Why do you think God will not provide for you? Why do you think God will disappoint you? Why do you think God will let you down? Are we no longer worshiping the same God that Abraham worshipped? When God called Abraham and said to him, leave your father's house and go to a place I will show you, he said to him, do not be afraid. I'll be your God. I'll make you into a huge nation. Abraham obeyed, and the promise God made was fulfilled. The same God promised to be the God of Isaac, his son, the God of Jacob. When Joseph was sold as a slave to Egypt, God came, approached him and said, do not be afraid. That same slave became from slavery to king. And Joseph, his father, was to leave his country and come to Egypt. And on his way, he had a sleep under a tree in the night, and the Spirit of God, angel of God, appeared to him and said, do not be afraid of going to where you are going. I'll make you into a great nation there, and even when you die, I'll make sure your bones are returned to your own home country. God fulfilled his promise. When he called Moses, he told him, do not be afraid. God fulfilled his promise to Moses. What about other prophets like Elijah? Elijah had an encounter with 450 prophets of Baal on one side, and they have the state support, they have the government support on them, behind them, and Elijah was a single person on the other side. God never failed Elijah. The 400 prophets of Baal prayed, nothing happened. Their God didn't send anything. But when Elijah prayed, God sent fire from heaven to consume the offering and to lick the water from the ground. What about Daniel? When Daniel was to be thrown into the den of lions, God said to him, do not be afraid. What was his crime? That he worshipped God. He didn't worship the image made by the king. And to even make matters worse, they allowed the lions to fast for 3 days. And eventually, Daniel was thrown into the den of lions. And when the king came the next day, the mouth of the lion was sealed by God. Daniel came out of the den of lion unharmed. And those who plot evil against him, themselves, their wives, and their children were thrown into the den of lion. And not even one bone of one of them reached the floor. That's the same God you have. What about the 3 little children, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? When the king said they should worship him and they said no, in anger, the king ordered that the fiery furnace be doubled, be tripled, and then after that he said the fire should be increased 7 times more, the temperature. And the children were thrown into the fire. But God made that fire as cool as a air-conditioned room. They were walking freely in the middle of the fire with another 4th person walking between them, which the king testified that looks like the image of the Son of God. They came out not even with one strand of their hair burnt from a fire that was as hot as 1,000 degrees. Is it not that same God you have? Do you know any prophet in the Bible that was ever disappointed by God? Name one prophet. Name one servant of God. Name one nation or a group of people that ever went to God and left him disappointed. It's the same God you have. When the angel approached Mary, he said to her, "Do not be afraid." Was Mary disappointed? No. So there is no need to be afraid. Yes, we may have fears roaming around us. Fears may cripple. We may hear about things that people get into the same situation we find ourselves and the outcome was different. But God can make exception for your case if you trust in him. All we need to do, give him a chance and see what he will do. But many of us, we don't know how powerful God is because we've never given him a chance in our life. We've never tried him. We are so afraid to make a step. Do you realize each time you take the courage to make a step, it builds your self-esteem, it builds your courage and your confidence, your faith and your trust in God, because you will not be disappointed. And from little things, you can build your faith to a greater thing, so that when great things come your way, you know that God will always be there for you because he has been there since the past. So what Jesus is saying to us today is, we have a God who cares. We have a God who takes into account things that we consider not to be important. Do you realize that your soul is worth more than all the silver and gold, all the money in this world put together? And that is why Jesus said, what will you gain if they give you the whole world, with all the money, with all the treasures, with everything in it, and you lose your soul? You gain nothing. If you place the world on a scale on one side and place a single soul on the other side, the side that has the soul of a human person will outweigh the world. That's how important you are. And because you are so important, you are so precious, you are worth dying for, that's why Jesus died for you. So my dear friends, there's no need to be afraid of anything. Sickness may affect your body, even death may affect your body, but it cannot affect your soul. Come to think of it, we all will die one day anyway. You either die now or you die later, but you will never live forever, isn't it? I've never seen anyone who lives forever. So if for fear of death, we throw away our faith, but no matter how we escape death, it will reach a stage where naturally we just have to die. If you don't die when you reach a certain age, you will hate yourself. Just come to think of it, you don't die until you reach 140. How would life be at 140? You can't drive anymore. You have no teeth. You can't walk by yourself. Your vision will be terrible. You can't hear anything. Life becomes boring. But I'm not saying we should jump into death, because that is not God's plans for us. But let us not, because of fear of death, allow ourselves to be crippled by fear. We cannot speak about God. We cannot tell people the right thing. We cannot speak for the voiceless. We cannot cry for the injustice happening in our society or among our people. We can't tell people the truth because we lose their support. We can't tell our friends what is right because they will abandon or desert us. We can't talk to people at work because we lose our position or we get sacked. You can survive without job. You can survive without a house. You can even survive without cars. Those things are important, but they are not necessary. At least one lesson we should learn from this COVID-19 is the things we consider to be essential are actually not. Not until recently, I didn't know it's only about 4 things in my life that could be essential. 4 reasons why I can go out. I didn't realize life was still going on. With your best car, you couldn't move out. Even those who have private jets now can't fly at will. They can't go to any country they want. This is what life is. So those things we think we can never do without, we can never survive without them, is not true. There's only one thing you can't survive without. That is God. And that is the person Jesus said we should be afraid of. Afraid of God, not being afraid of punishment per se, but out of love for Him to avoid hurting Him. So, my dear friends, let us pray at this Mass that God will give us the grace to let out fear through the window of our lives and to let in faith through the door. Only then we can stand and face the future. May God bless you.